Coming up, a rapid unscheduled disassembly.
ULA gets its engines.
And we're joined live by the COO of Firefly Space Systems. Stay tuned. Tomorrow begins right now. And welcome to Tomorrow, episode 7.26 for Saturday, August 23rd, 2014. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is the beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented Carrie Ann Higginbotham, and we'll be your hosts for this episode. Before we get started, I'd like to give a huge shout out to all the patrons of Tomorrow who have helped make this specific episode go. These are the patrons who have contributed at least $5 to this specific episode, and you can find more information on that over at patreon.com/TMRO. We are a crowd-funded show, and every single dollar helps. And Patreon's cool because you can kind of set some of those parameters to make it work for you. So if you want to set an upper level limit and say, I'm never going to give more than this amount per month, you can do that. Or you can do, exactly. Or, you can do anything you want. There's a lot of really cool stuff you can do over there. All right, let's go ahead and get started with some space news. It was a fairly... The space news this week was light. There wasn't a lot of it. But the news that we had was, like, epic. So, right?
Yeah, there's like 4 interesting things, but like only 4.
Like big ones. All right, so let's start with the Falcon 9 reusable Development 1 vehicle. It had a rapid unscheduled disassembly. Let's take a quick peek at that. And you can see it ascending. There's one unit. Now it begins descending as multiple units.
That's a feature.
It's a feature. Actually, it is. So keep in mind, man, news websites. They love they love explosions, right? And so a lot of them are just hammering on this and saying how the rocket exploded and blah 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 blah. Well, it's a development rocket. That's what the dev in Dev 1 means. Yeah. So and in fact. First off, a few things. Here was Elon's tweet. He basically said, hang on, I should have actually had that ready. He said, 3-engine F9R Dev 1, auto-terminated during the test flight. No injuries, no near injuries. And rockets are tricky. Thanks. I think that's why we call it rocket science. And then SpaceX did have an official statement on it, which said, earlier today in McGregor, Texas, SpaceX conducted a test flight of a 3-engine version of the F9R test vehicle, successor to Grasshopper. During the flight, an anomaly was detected in the vehicle, and the flight termination system automatically terminated the mission. You can read the rest of that up on the screen right there. Well, maybe you can't. If you're watching that on a mobile phone, there's no way you're able to read that. But you can get more information. If you head over to twitter.com/SpaceX, they've actually got this the statement on the McGregor testing. Look, dude, people, it was a test vehicle, right? I mean, that's how this happens.
That's exactly what you're doing. You're testing things. Things got tested, then you saw results.
And as long as you get valuable data from it,
exactly,
that's good. Now you don't want to do that in production.
No. Testing vehicle. This
is where you want to do it. In fact, here's a quote from Gwen, the president of SpaceX.
But that means we're not pushing hard enough. We have to tunnel one of those vehicles into the ground by trying something really hard. We haven't done that yet. So now our challenge to our test team is. You gotta push hard enough that we're gonna see something happen. A spectacular video. That's a spectacular video. Failures are very spectacular.
Yeah, so, now that wasn't recent, right? This was at a TEDx talk.
For sure.
Back when the Grasshopper program was going, which the Grasshopper's been retired. We've moved on now to F9 or Dev 1. This doesn't mean anything. It just means that they gathered data, and as long as you get usable data from the test, then you're doing good. So, There you go. I mean that's it. It
There's
looks
really
cool.
nothing to
It's
say.
Epic. There isn't. It's epic. It looks really cool. It was a test and something.
And nobody
didn't
was
go right.
injured. I mean, that's the really important part here. There was an FAA person on site at all times. Nobody was on on F9 or Dev. Nobody was in an area that was going to get hurt. I believe there are some other cell phone videos where you can see cows scattering.
I love the cows.
But
in
they are
McGregor.
far enough away where nobody was having steak inadvertently for dinner. Yeah, I mean, but it's still interesting, and in light of that it was a development vehicle and no one got hurt, etc., etc., it still looked really cool.
It did look kind of cool.
So yeah, so there's that.
So there you go. That happened this last Friday, actually. Speaking of other things that happened this week, if you remember, United Launch Alliance, there was this huge hoop-de-doo over whether they're going to get their RD-180 engines from Russia due to sanctions. Russia basically said, well, fine, you're going to need trampolines to get to your space station. You can't have our engines anymore. Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So would they get their shipment of engines? Will they be able to continue to fly the Atlas V? And the answer is... They got the engines. Absolutely. There were 2 engines shipped on August 20th that made it into United Launch Alliance's hands. Fun little stats. They now have 15 RD-180 engines on hand as of that delivery.
Yes.
So they've got plenty of flights, and there will take an additional 6 engines are due for delivery in 2015. And... there are 27 RD-180 engines on order through 2017. Now, this isn't to say that all shipments will continue through in the future,
right?
But it is a pretty good sign that they're not going to take the shipment away.
Yeah.
So it did point to a potential flaw in the Atlas V design.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily Lockheed's fault. They were kind of pushed to do it that way. We wanted Russia to build these engines for us.
Right.
But, you know, at least now we have the engines. We don't have to worry about the Atlas V going away. We still have both the Atlas V and the Delta IV, so United Launch Alliance is in a pretty good spot.
Sanctions did kind of seem a little bit like posturing, and I think this just sort of speaks to that.
A lot like posturing. Completely like posturing.
Trying to be subtle.
Yeah. So there have been 48 launches of the Atlas V rocket using these engines, and of those, let's see here, there were 54 total flights using the RD-180 engines. Throughout time itself. All right, so here we go. Oh man, China. China.
You know, we should. I don't know. We can discuss that in a little.
So
go ahead.
China launched. Hopefully I can pronounce it. Can you pronounce those? Gaofen 2 and Bright PL2.
Sure.
So Gaofen 2 is a civilian remote sensing satellite. It's to help them.
It could be Gaofen.
Could be Gaofen. It's designed to help respond to disasters and anything else like that. And then Bright PL2 is a Polish satellite. It weighs about 15 pounds. It's going to measure variability in star brightness. These were launched on a LongMarch 4B rocket. Now, we do have footage of this, but it's like 10 seconds long. Do you have that footage?
We should put on a Vine.
That's not the footage.
That's
the
the footage. It's so
RD-180.
close, though.
That's
Looks just like the footage.
There you go. That's the footage. So here you go. There's no audio because it was just we got to see 2 seconds of it there. 2 seconds of it there.
Okay.
Yep. Bunch on screens, and that's what the thing. And
cool,
yay! All right, that was
right.
the footage. So
that would make a great
China.
Vine. See?
It would make a good
just
Vine.
loop it. Just loop it.
You know what? I keep thinking China's behind the times by not offering this in real time.
Nope. They're ahead.
They're ahead of the time
Decided to
because
Vine all of their launches from now on.
they're going to Vine their launches.
Can we start that rumor, please? Because that would be epic.
So actually, let's show that one more time. Let's show that clip one more time. That 15 seconds of video.
We need to put in some really bad sound effects too.
It like barely gets off the pad, and then they cut away. All right, so there you go. Thanks for the sound
There you go.
effects.
That's all you need. We should do that.
On the flip side of the coin, China, when Russia has better launch coverage than you, for shame.
Yeah.
For shame. So Galileo launched via Ariane Space on it. Well, I suppose this isn't Russia technically. So Ariane Space via a Soyuz. Here's the launch coverage. Check it out.
Attention pour le décompte final. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop. Décollage.
There you go. That was a beautiful, successful launch, right?
It looks beautiful.
It looks beautiful and successful.
It looks successful.
It looks successful until until you take a peek at the orbit that it dropped off its satellites in, and it was a little bit low. So the launcher didn't quite place this into the Galileo satellites into the orbit that it was intended for. So the vehicle, the Galileo satellite, may not have enough fuel on board in order to get it into its appropriate orbit. It may be a lost satellite. Now, they have ordered 30 of these in the Galileo network. They've ordered 30, so they didn't order any insurance on it because they actually only need 24 of the satellites to have a full working constellation.
Well.
So they may... So, yeah, so no insurance. It's the $7.2 billion Galileo network. Yeah.
I guess they have a lot more tries to get it right.
I guess. Yeah, well, no, this is Galileo 2, so they've already got one up there. They got the...
All right.
Yep, so there you go.
23 more to go, guys.
You know, actually, we didn't know. So yesterday, so this launched August 22nd at 12:27 Universal Time. I forgot to mention the Chinese satellite launch was August 19th at 3:15 Universal Time. So this launched August 22nd, and as of August 22nd, it looked like it was fine. There was nothing that said there was something wrong with this particular launch. It looked great. And it wasn't until today, actually, right as we're doing the show notes for the show, like in our news feeds, we're starting to see, boom, it didn't go, boom, it didn't go. Oh,
it
that's
is
beautiful.
Really beautiful. I mean,
So yeah, there you go. No insurance, unfortunately, but they've got plenty of spares to fill up the rest of that constellation. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we've got the Chief Operating Officer, PJ King of Firefly Space Systems.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, this is going to be some cool stuff. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or follow little fashion lines. Filled with awesome expectation. This girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking. She's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Her heat keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking. She's fire walking to be free.
And welcome back to Tomorrow. Now, before we get started with this next segment, I did want to give a huge thank you to all the patrons of Tomorrow who have helped to make this specific segment of Tomorrow happen. These are the people who have contributed at least $10 to this specific episode. You can get more information on how to contribute to Tomorrow over at patreon.com/TMRO. All right, now to get straight into it, we are joined live by Firefly COO PJ King. He is the one that's helping to make. I believe you're actually a co-founder of Firefly Space Systems as well. Is that correct, PJ?
That's right, Benjamin.
All right. So first off, thank you to the show. Tell me a little bit about Firefly Space Systems and what you guys are doing.
So in a nutshell, Firefly Space Systems is developing the world's most mass-produced, lowest-cost light satellite launch vehicle. So this is a dedicated light satellite launch vehicle for the emerging small satellite market. And we aim to produce the lowest cost vehicle with the highest launch frequency available.
Now, what is that low cost and what is that high launch frequency?
So in terms of cost, we're targeting 8 to 9 million for an individual launch, and frequency, we want to get our launch frequencies up to every single month, at least.
So
our vehicle is very specifically designed to do that.
Once a month, and you said somewhere between, was that 8 to 9 million or so?
Yes, for a single launch, and we're looking at having discounts for multiple launches.
And how much can you bring up on that launch?
Into low Earth orbit, into an equatorial low Earth orbit, we're looking at a little bit more than 400 kilos into a 400 to 500 kilometer orbit, and into a polar or sun-synchronous orbit, more than 200 kilos.
Now, more than anything else, more than just being a small launcher, what really interested us and you guys was you're doing some fascinating things with your engine and with your tank design. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing with your engine.
Well, great engineering does for a penny what anyone can do for a buck. And often when it comes to designing a vehicle like this, the challenge is to simplify the vehicle to enable mass production. Large, complex vehicles with complex turbo pumps, which are a key ingredient in many launch vehicles, are complex, difficult pieces of equipment to make. So in our case, since we want higher frequency, what we have to do is close the design case to make a very simple vehicle that's economical to build and reliable to launch at a high rate. That means what we have to do is we have to have simple components that are very efficient. So we need super lightweight tanks. We run on methane because it has higher thrust than kerosene. And we remove the nozzle, and we have a thing called a plug aerospike engine, which also improves efficiency. So what we do is we put together individual components to close the design case on what's known as an all-pressure fed two-stage vehicle to orbit. It has never been done before, but all of the individual pieces are known technology.
Now let's
so
talk
it
about
isn't a research project.
Let's talk about that aerospike engine for a moment, because that's kind of in my opinion, the really interesting part about the vehicle. What is an aerospike engine? Let's start off with that.
Okay, well, so I suppose to answer that, we have to ask ourselves, whenever you look at any launcher, you'll notice that there's typically one or more bell nozzles on the bottom. The big nozzle you see at the base of a rocket, for anyone who isn't familiar with it. So why do they exist? Why do we have them on a rocket in the first place? Well, they're there to direct the thrust and actually expand the gases coming out of the engine to optimally give us the maximum thrust to the engine. Now, but if you think about it, the maximum thrust is a feature of the external air pressure. That air pressure changes as the rocket rises, but the shape of the bell does not. So in the perfect world, the ideal nozzle on a rocket engine would be a bell-shaped nozzle that had the complete flexibility to alter shape as it went up through the atmosphere. But of course, as a practical engineering exercise, building those is extremely difficult. So actually what people do is they have a simple bell nozzle that's optimized for a particular atmospheric pressure, but it's always going to be off perfection everywhere else on the ride up. An aerospike is an attempt to adjust for that. So what an aerospike engine does is it removes the bell nozzle and it uses aerodynamics to achieve the same pressure effect that a nozzle would give. So as you rise up through the atmosphere, at any specific pressure, it is not as efficient as a bell, but because it has aerodynamic flexibility, on the average, integrated over the whole launch sequence, it's better.
So to talk about that a bit more, you talk about the traditional engine bell. Basically, what you're doing is rather than having that engine bell, you've basically got as you ascend, you're expanding the size of your bell using pressure, using air almost, to create the optimal size bell as you go up. So you have the optimal amount of thrust or lift at any moment in time.
That is it in a nutshell. What happens is it's quite difficult to explain without a diagram, but at the center of our engine, if you look at a picture of the bottom of it, imagine that you see it from as if you like one half of a bell, because it's curved. It's curved on the interior. So if we direct our thrust towards it, that provides, if you will, the same effect as a bell on one side, and aerodynamics on the external side of the rocket provides the rest.
So this is a fairly new but tested technology. So far as I know, we've got this working, but we've never actually flown with it on a real vehicle before. Yours will be the first vehicle to actually fly with an aerospike engine. Any concerns with that?
Yeah, that is true. I mean, there has been a lot of work done on this in the past. NASA did a lot of research on it. Rocketdyne did a lot of work on this for the X-33 back in the 90s. They used a different version of it called a linear aerospike, but the physical principle is identical, and there's some interesting YouTube videos on that for anyone who wants to see it in action. And yes, they built it, and yes, they tested it, and yes, it all worked. It has never been used on a real vehicle. On the X-33, that program was cancelled, but not because the aerospike didn't work. There were other issues with the program. So yeah, this is not a new idea, but it has never actually been flown. So this is well researched. A huge amount of work has gone into it, and we feel it's an optimal opportunity to test this on our light satellite launcher. We believe it'll work, and we are quietly confident that we'll see a positive effect from it.
Now, it's not just your propulsion that's new and different. You're also looking to use carbon composites for your tanks as well. What are some of the challenges with doing that?
So carbon composite is, as you know, it's a newish material. You know, it comes in different flavors, but certainly it's a comparatively new material for launch vehicles. To my knowledge, the Firefly Alpha will be the first vehicle to fly an all-liquid, all-composite solution into orbit. The material has the advantage of being extremely light and extremely strong compared to traditional metals used in tanks. But obviously, it contains its own technical challenges as a relatively new material to get it to work correctly and to have proven reliability under high pressure.
And
we believe we have those in hand.
And you're currently testing that right now, or is this still kind of we think we're going to use carbon composites, but we can go back to something else if we need to?
Oh no, we're using carbon composite.
All right. So
yeah, we're winding test tanks at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, that's so. When do you expect to begin testing?
Well, we're very conscious of keeping to a fairly rapid deadline, which we have. At the same time, we also don't like announcing vaporware. We're very much an action-based company. We would be hopeful of doing a first engine test probably towards the back end of Q1 of 2015.
We've got a few questions from the chat room. One of them is from Citizen62, who is now logged into the chat room, asking if you're planning. You just talked about not announcing vaporware, but you've got the Alpha. We've kind of heard rumblings of the Beta as well. Are you working to move towards the heavy satellite market in the near-ish future?
No, we do have a heavier version of the Alpha called the Beta. And the Beta vehicle is it's a larger vehicle, but as you can see there, it's really reusing the same engine, the same technology on the Alpha. It's just more of it in terms of the strap-on augmentation on the first stage. So the engines, etc., it's all the same. It's to carry a heavier class of light satellite. In this case, it will do a little over a ton to low Earth orbit, but we're not planning on moving up the mass ranks into the multiple tons range. We feel that market is well served already.
And speaking of the market, who is your market? Who are you going to be bringing up to space at this price point?
We're looking at essentially the market of people are looking for light satellite launches, I should say, in the hundreds of kilos range and down. So obviously for the Alpha vehicle, 400 and less. For the Beta vehicle, obviously a little bit heavier than that. We expect most people to be looking for polar orbits of one kind or another, though we do have, interest from a number of equatorial launch customers. So really it's a commercial play here, and we will be launching all the way down to the CubeSats, the 1, 6, 12U CubeSats as well. We think we have an interesting solution for those folks too.
And actually, that brings up a great question from the chat room from Icarus Factor, which is, are there any special designs for mass launching nanosats?
Do we have a special design, or do they exist in general?
You didn't actually specify, but I'll say, do you have a special design for, if because a nanosat's going to be much smaller than your total payload. So
sure.
Do you have a special launcher platform for nanosats?
Well, we're working on something in that regard. Let's just say that particular end of the market is something we do see as an important development and an important end of the market. And yes, we're working on something for those folks. We can't announce anything yet, but yes, we are working on something to have a solution for those folks too. And
then Marx asks, what about reusability? Are you going to be able to reuse any components of the rocket at all?
That's an excellent question. Our vehicle, the Alpha, in its original stage, it's not reusable. However, if people look carefully at it, they will probably notice that a lot of the technology components involved in it are very much designed with reusability in mind. So yes, our ambition is ultimately to have a reusable vehicle in the not too distant future. And what we do with Alpha is we actually flight qualify the reusable components. If you like, all the internal reusable components are being flight qualified on the Alpha. They will be applicable to our future reusable vehicle.
What does reusability get you then in the long run?
In 2 words, low cost. If you think of it this way, launch to date, all launches around the world, there is approximately 80 a year. That compares to about 80 million flights a year if you compare it to aviation. And I can't even imagine how many car journeys a year. So one of the things we need to deal with urgently in launch is we need to deal with this issue of reusability so that the heritage on any specific vehicle can be increased. Obviously, to date, vehicles are generally single use, so they are expended after a single use. That's a lot of technology to throw away. And so we need to deal with that, because that will give us a higher degree of reliability. It will increase the launch frequency. And of course, crucially, it will massively reduce cost. There will be a step change in cost once we hit reusability.
Once you hit that reusability goal, do you have a rough guesstimate as to what that price drop will be?
I would think it will certainly halve the launch costs.
So you're already going from one of the lowest cost providers out there to then halving that again. And this would be a great vehicle for nanosats or those small payloads, which is a fairly underserved market right now. The only way they can get up into space at a reasonable price is as a secondary payload on some other vehicle. What are some disadvantages of doing that, and then advantages of flying on your vehicle instead?
Well, as secondary payloads, of course, you're prone to the whims of the primary. If mass growth, if there's a delay in the primary, or the weight grows in the primary satellite, you can end up being kicked off. You're subject to delays. You can't choose your own orbit. There's a whole variety of reasons why being the secondary or tertiary payload on a launch system is not that desirable. Obviously, being a primary or being in pole position, it gives you a lot of advantages. I mean, you can choose your orbit, you have a much greater flexibility, and precision for small satellites into a particular orbit is something that's becoming more and more of an issue. And of course, cost. If the cost is right, it's vastly more desirable to be able to choose your own launch. If the launch frequency goes up, it's highly desirable to be able to slip, to go from one launch to another, to know that if you miss a window, that there is another one that shows up pretty soon, that you're not delayed for years. For light satellites, the average delay is around 12 months from when you've actually agreed to book it. That's crazy. Nobody would fly like that.
So speaking of cost, on the flip side of this, you're making it lower cost for people to fly payloads up into space, but developing a rocket is very expensive. Chris Howlett's asking, how are you funding this?
Well, I suppose back in the beginning, launch vehicles were funded by governments. It was the purview and the sole purview of governments to fund launch systems. Then when the new space movement came along, and a great credit to SpaceX particularly for this, there was, if you like, an advent of billionaires taking a chance and funding their own launch projects. What we've done is we've essentially crowdsourced the multimillionaires. So our funding has come largely both internally and externally amongst family and friends, amongst the large cohort of people who are out there who really want to see something move in this space.
And who are some of the people you've got on your team? You've got a few impressive people to actually make this go. You're not just a bunch of people off the street who said, let's make some rockets. I mean, you have some names behind you. Yeah,
sure. Dr. Tom Merkusic, co-founder and CEO of the company, has tremendous heritage in the new space industry. He's a well-known individual, and many members of the team have come from, the new space companies. A lot of them have seen time in places like Virgin or Blue Origin or SpaceX, of course, as well. And I think that's important. Having people on the team who have actually done this before and been to space and know how to put a vehicle like this together is critical.
Are there any, this comes from Badger Legs, are there any treaty issues like ITAR that is challenging for you? For those who don't know, ITAR is a restriction in the United States that prevents you from showing, it basically classifies the vehicle as a weapon.
Yeah, it's ITAR essentially covers launch vehicles. It covers a lot of other things, electronic components, satellites, though many satellite subcomponents are going to be, I believe, removed from ITAR later this year. But essentially what it does is ITAR covers any components that the State Department considers potential dual use. It covers launchers, it covers a lot of other things. But yes, with launch vehicles, it's something we are constantly mindful of.
Any challenges with ITAR for you guys, or is it just kind of a thing that you have to deal with?
It's something we're always conscious of. One of the main challenges is people working on the launch vehicle. they have to be U.S. persons as it's defined in the law and so forth. So there's a limit to being able to hire people who are not from the United States.
All right, 2 last questions. This first one comes from Icarus Factor, which is, are you using any 3D printing technology on your vehicles?
We are actually in the prototyping process. We do use 3D printers. At the moment, we're using them principally to look at small components rather than just having them in a CAD system. You know, it is very convenient to be able to print out prototypes of components, take a look at them, discuss them, and see how they work. We haven't introduced 3D printing into the actual live vehicle components yet, but it's certainly something we'll be taking a look at.
And final question is, where can people go to get more information and follow you guys online if they get excited about Firefly?
Well, they can go to our website, fireflyspace.com. They can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. We're reasonably good at sending out tweets, and we're always very happy to hear from people. And on our Facebook site, you can actually lob in questions. You can ask a rocket scientist if you've questions about how you build rockets, or any questions at all about space travel and astronautics in general. Feel free to drop us a question there. And what we do is once a week we circulate them around the engineering team, and we get the appropriate person to answer your question.
Oh, that's really cool. That's a really awesome way to get kind of interactive with you guys.
Yeah, we like to hear what people think, and you know, we like to think we're an open company, and we very much like to think of this as sort of the people's rocket, if you will. So we're very happy to have questions and suggestions from everyone.
Well, we're excited to see what you guys are doing. Next-gen propulsion technology, next-gen tank technology. You guys are doing some pretty cool things in the aerospace industry.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, comments from our last week's show. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome, future patrons of Tomorrow. If you're not familiar with who Tomorrow is, we're a live weekly webcast about the cosmos and human exploration of the stars. We'll feature things like rocket launches, we'll have guest interviews, we'll have amazing conversations about the cosmos, and of course an interactive chat room so that you can not only talk with other like-minded cosmic explorers, but also us, the hosts of the show, as well. And we're just generally excited about humans exploring space, and we're here on Patreon as a way to crowdfund the show itself, because this isn't something that a normal network would pick up, but it is something that a lot of us are really, really excited about. For those of you not familiar with Patreon, think of it like a recurring Kickstarter, a way for you to contribute to the show, but on a per episode basis instead of just once. Now, you can contribute whatever amount you feel fit for these episodes, but once you start hitting that $1 mark, we're going to start giving rewards back to you. At $1, you'll get your name in the credits. At $5, you'll get your name in the credits. Plus, you're going to get a exclusive Google Hangout. At $10, you get even more stuff. Contribute what you feel is fair. Now, you know what I said, this is on a per episode basis, and we do have more than one episode per month. So if you want to make sure that you don't spend too much money per month, you can set an upper level cap. For example, you can contribute $5 per episode, but no more than $25 per month. Or you can contribute $1 per episode, but no more than $10 per month, whatever fits your budget. And if you'd like to see where your crowdfunded contributions are going, check out our goals. We're always getting new equipment, we're trying to do cool new things with social media, we're trying to do some amazing things in this space, and each goal helps us get closer and closer to realizing one of those new things. With the help of you, our patrons, we can make this show truly something special. And let me be the first to welcome you to Tomorrow. Welcome back to Tomorrow. What was the quote you said? Well, like when we do space news, we should refer to it as last week's news today on tomorrow,
yes,
something like that.
Something like that, yes.
All right, before we get into comments from our last week's show, again, ironic that we're doing a week-old comments on a show named Tomorrow. I did want to give a huge shout-out to the patrons of Tomorrow who have helped to make this episode go. These are the Patreon Plus subscribers. These are people who've contributed at least $3 to this specific episode. Oh, wait. There's more. We've also got the Patreon subscribers. These are people who've contributed at least $1 to this specific episode. Now, actually, these are just the people who've only contributed. I say only. This is $1 only. This is not anyone above that level. So a huge thank you to all our patrons of tomorrow for help making this go. You can get more information on how to help crowdfund this show over at patreon.com/TMRO. We are a crowdfunded show. We are actually going to be changing our goal levels. So at 1,000 we had like Livestream Enterprise, or 1,500, I don't remember what it was. The next two goals will be changing. I believe we're going to be changing the $1,000 level to a swag store. So we're working on finishing up the logo, just doing some of those last minute things, and making it look nice and pretty. And then at $1,000, what we're going to do is have Amazon fulfillment of actual decent stuff. Things that you actually want, not like crummy, you know what I mean. And then it'll be Amazon fulfilled, so you'll be able to use Amazon Prime. We'll hopefully be able to do, I think, worldwide delivery at that point. Make your life really easy that way. We're not looking to make any money on the swag store per se. We're trying to just kind of break even, and that goal will help us to pre-fund and get all the stuff we need in there. So that's what's going on there. All right, let's take a peek at some comments from our last week's show. This first one comes from James Moore from Patreon. Speaking of Patreon, here you go.
Although I appreciate Tyler's enthusiasm about bringing a rocket company to Canada, I can't help but compare where Open Space Orbital is to where Rocket Labs USA is. Miles and miles and miles apart. The thing that concerns me the most is the deliverables, or lack thereof, in the OSL Kickstarter campaign. You're basically telling me that you have no engine, no rocket, a sketched out business plan, and no formal market analysis, and you want me to foot the bill for all of this? No thanks.
That's fair. I think what excited us about it is the fact that we're at a point in time where you can have a Kickstarter campaign to start a rocket company. Now, it certainly would be nice if they were a little further along in some of that development stuff, but keep in mind, it's you say that there's a sketched out business plan. We didn't go into the business plan on the show per se. That doesn't mean that their business plan is actually sketched out. They actually may have a very, very good, solid business plan. Certainly they don't have a rocket. They don't have an engine, right? They're definitely.
There's other companies that don't have a rocket or an engine necessarily.
It's hard because we just did an interview with Firefly Space Systems.
Right.
They are truly like leading us forward with this stuff.
For a while, Atlas didn't have an engine. Really?
Well, yeah, not the same though.
No, I know, but I'm just saying.
You're doing these interviews with like Firefly Space, and we had who was it? Rocket Labs Limited, who have carbon composite tanks.
Right.
They've done this stuff before.
Right.
They're in the industry. And then you compare it to Open Space Orbital, where they haven't, and it's not exactly a fair comparison. But so maybe nothing will happen.
Right.
But it's cool that we're in a time where you could potentially kickstart a rocket company. I think that's a really interesting concept. We'll see how far they actually get. I'm not sure I agree. I'm not sure I agree or disagree, but we'll see where they get and go from there. Your thoughts? Am I crazy?
No.
All right, cool. David Joseph Petit from Patreon also says,
a response to Dada's comment about Apollo 13 happening on a Mars mission. It's hard to speculate about that because with it being a mission to Mars, all the variables would change. The craft would be completely different. There would have to be more resources on board to work with. Who's to say NASA and the crew couldn't have prevailed again? Also, as far as the remnants left on the moon go, I agree that they should be preserved as historical artifacts, but that being said, disturbing them as little as possible, we should study the effects that 40-plus years of exposure on the moon's surface has had on the materials.
Well, that's a good idea. So materials-wise, absolutely see how they've broken down with the extra radiation and what zero-G has done to anything. And, micrometeorite impacts.
Some of the oldest stuff that we have out there. So,
Yep. And only. Oldest and some of the only, not only though.
I suppose.
Regarding Apollo 13 happening on a Mars mission, fair comments, actually.
Yeah.
They would have to have a lot more consumables. The craft would probably be larger, and if it's not, how sucky would that be?
Right.
Just whether it worked or not, just being, spam in a can for that long would be terrible. But yeah, the craft would be larger. You'd have a lot more consumables, a lot more air. But yeah, but Apollo 13, they basically had to shut their power down.
Yeah.
Though, so even if you had more consumables, no power for the better part of 2 years. Is what that'd be, right? So it'd be like 9 months there, 9 months back.
Right.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I see your point is valid.
Yes.
But with the level of problem that they had on Apollo 13.
It depends on when the problem actually occurred. And I mean, there's so many different variables there. It's really just sort of hard to tell.
It is hard to tell, but I think I think both points actually stand.
Right.
So there you go.
All right.
Moving along, Destructor 1701 on Reddit. This is on the subreddit of Tomorrow.
Yes.
/r/TMRO.
Yes. This is actually a subset of his comment. I just want to be very clear. It was a very, very long comment. I just took this one part out.
Wait, what is it with you guys writing novels? We're not going to put a novel on the screen. Think of the comments as like Twitter comments. 140K. If this is a subset, this is huge.
Yeah, well, because he wanted to comment on like 8 different things that happened in the show because he didn't catch it live. So I just...
You can make 8 comments.
I'm just saying.
Anyhow.
I like...
It's not, I mean, it's... Okay. Anyhow. Come, make it go again.
Fine. I haven't been giving Copenhagen suborbitals their fair due. It strikes me that there's a lack of ambition inherent in the name. I mean, Virgin Galactic are going suborbital, but at least they've expressed an ambition for intercontinental ballistic humans and eventually orbit. But heck, that fire test was legit, and I'll have to take notice when I see them in the news again.
We need to get Copenhagen suborbitals on this show. What they are doing is the right side of crazy.
Yeah.
And it is awesome.
It's
I
really
love those
amazing.
guys. They are absolutely, you know what, and what the other thing I love, and I was complaining about this before, is that they show everything. They
Yep.
show their successes,
Yep.
they show their failures. They are very human.
Yes.
I mean, they put all their cards out onto the table,
Yep.
and they clearly love what they do.
Yeah.
So, and actually, I thought the same thing, saying Copenhagen suborbitals, you know, the name limits them to suborbital, but, you know, they probably don't care. They'll just do whatever the heck they want to do.
Right, they're just a subsidiary of Copenhagen Orbital. It's fine. It's fine.
So, yeah, that was legit. I do love those guys. They're pretty hardcore awesome.
Good stuff.
All right, moving along. Also on the subreddit of Tomorrow.
Classic Sky. I just want to give a shout out to Tomorrow for supporting Roku and their great Roku app. It's still called Spacevidcast, but I love that I can watch the show on my TV every week with great ease.
Yes. There you go.
It was a shout out.
No,
Classic Sky.
the Roku
It was
app.
awesome.
The Roku app is pretty awesome, and
Yeah.
so if you have a Roku, you can actually watch our shows. You can watch them on demand. There are also live channels from NASA. It's really cool. It is still labeled Spacevidcast. While we've transitioned, I'd say 80% of our stuff over to Tomorrow from Spacevidcast. There's still that last. Actually, every show still says Spacevidcast in both the opening and the ending. Hopefully, that will change in January. But yeah, Pete Reese made this remarkable Roku channel that we absolutely love and adore, and it's if you want to watch it on your high-def television, it works exceptionally well. He actually made the one for NASA Edge as well, which is also another really good channel. I mean, their show's almost as good as ours, so there's that.
They could use a feminine touch.
Oh, all right. This one is from a forced G Plus account on YouTube. Gee, I wonder if they liked the fact that they were forced to use Google Plus to comment.
I thought that was kind of funny, personally.
Here you go.
Artificial gravity does not equal simulated gravity. Please use simulated term, please.
Yes, you are correct. And I think we did mistakenly say artificial in last week's show when we were talking about something. Was it us or was it a clip? I think someone else said artificial and we just kept saying artificial because that's what. But anyhow, yes, you are correct. Artificial and simulated gravity are indeed two different things. We can create simulated gravity. We cannot create artificial gravity. At least not yet. Or can we? Finally, from YouTube.
Fabio says, Gold Rush in space? How about helium-3 on the moon and Mercury? Nuclear fission will kind of find a good use for that stuff.
Fusion. Different. You said fission.
Did I say fission?
Yeah, I believe
Sorry,
it.
Fusion.
Sounded like fission to me. Nuclear
fusion. Fusion.
Yeah, so...
Sorry.
This is one of those things where helium-3, space-based solar power all sound great on paper and will remove our reliance on fossil fuels, and I absolutely hope that that is true someday, and that will actually be the case. But we're not there yet for any space-based alternate energy, anything, right? And I'm sure the advocates will yell at me for saying that, but the cold, harsh reality is we're not there yet. Even helium-3, even if we brought it back to us right now, there's not a whole lot we can do with it that's terribly useful, that yields more energy than we put in on a scale in which we can do something meaningful with, if that makes sense.
Right.
So, yeah, maybe someday. The part of the problem is it's so rare here that it's hard for us to do the tests and whatnot that we need to do.
Right.
All right, that's our show for this week. I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching. Next week, I believe that's the last show of the month, and I'm trying a new thing. By the way, I'm trying a new thing. I haven't told you yet.
Awesome!
She's learning
Watch
for the
Carrie
first time.
Ann's face as she hears this for the first time.
Well, we tried it once before.
Oh, did we?
And it failed.
We were supposed to never talk about that again.
It's not after dark yet.
Oh, sorry.
So what this is next, the last show of the month, I'm going to try to turn into a community roundtable like we did a couple shows ago, where we bring everyone in on Google Hangouts, and anyone in the community can join, and we'll talk about whatever, and I'll just bounce around different people, and we'll just have a conversation about whatever. So we're going to coordinate this on the subreddit of tomorrow. So head over to reddit.com/r/TMRO. Someone, myself or someone, will get a topic going on what this is going to be for next week. Right. Who all wants to participate, and we'll get the Google Hangout information in there. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. Hopefully we'll kind of work through some of the technology stuff that we haven't figured out. It's going to be a rough show. Straight up, it's going to be a rough show, but I want to do that at the end of each and every month. So that's what we're going to try. We're going to try it.
Okay.
We're going to see if it works. Try it for the rest of the year. See if we like it. Go from there. So that's our show. Thank you everyone so much for watching. After Dark, up next.